And now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can choose the TV you want with DirecTV.
So now they can pick out their favorite entertainment when they sign up and save money?
You mean if you like sports?
You can get a sports pack.
What about entertainment?
Entertainment pack.
It's like finding an old pizza with your favorite toppings, which for me would be pineapple and toenails.
Pineapple?
Pay for the TV you want, not the TV you don't. Genre pack starting at $34.99 a month. Visit DirecTV.com for more information. New residential customers only. Local channels vary by market. Services renew monthly unless you cancel online. Credit card required. Restrictions apply.
This is the Long Island Report on 107.1 WLIR. Using common sense. Talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is the Long Island Report. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me, my co-host, the esteemed Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. Well, Jesse, this election cycle is over. The next one is already in progress. But let's do a recap and analysis of what just happened this past Tuesday. So, what's your take? What happened in the midterm elections? You can talk to me about New York State, Long Island, nationwide, anywhere you want to go, and I'll give you my commentary.
Great. I think that, listen, there was a red wave that came through New York, and that red wave was launched and carried by our gubernatorial candidate, Lee Zeldin. You know, Lee Zeldin accumulated more votes than any Republican gubernatorial candidates in the last 50 years, and that includes that by Pataki, who had won that seat. You know, it's a different state in 2022 than it is in 1994, though the issues were almost very similar. And I got to credit Lee Zeldin because of Lee Zeldin's aggressive, philosophical, issue-orientated campaign on crime, inflation, the economy, and the direction of our country with liberties and freedoms like elimination of mandates, and instead of government taking care of you, you know, empowering ourselves. You know, the House of Representatives is going to switch from Democrat to Republican, and that's going to be anywhere between 1 to 4 seats, and those 4 seats are coming from New York, seats that were won by Republicans by like 51, 52% of the vote, and that's because of the coattails that Lee Zeldin had. Here in Suffolk County and Long Island, Lee Zeldin really rocked it. I am proud of the voters of Suffolk County and the committee members of Suffolk County who came out and provided Lee Zeldin with almost 100,000 vote plurality out of Suffolk County and almost 60% of the vote. And that helped us defeat here locally a 40-year, incumbent Democrat Assemblyman, Steve Engelbright. And we are within a whisker of defeating another long-term Democrat in a blue seat, Kimberly Pierre in AD 11, and taking back the 4th senatorial district, which would give us five of the 9 Long Island senatorial districts. This was a defining moment, and I got to tell you that everyone is crediting the successes down ballot to the aggressive, successful campaign that Lee Zeldin set forward. You know, it's unfortunate that there were several areas, even the inroads he made in New York City, still could not overcome the Democratic machine there, and really up into Hudson Valley. I mean, Westchester was a problem with about a 60% loss there, and in the capital region. So there's still work to be done. But one thing that Lee Zeldin has done as well is not only set the stage for the Republicans to win in blue seats, he has set a path and a direction and a methodology for future statewide races to follow, so that we have a shot at this, at taking statewide races. I mean, you never know. We may hear from Lee Zeldin again, and we should. The people of New York and the people of this country need more Lee Zeldins in office. And but overall, it was a great night for Republicans. It was a great night for Suffolk County Republicans, Long Island Republicans, and all Republicans in New York.
All right, let me give you my take on this. I separate out the discussion. I think everybody expected the red wave. The red wave wasn't a red wave. It was barely a red trickle. It was very disappointing if you're a Republican I'm speaking as a House Democrat, but I want to see the Republicans do well because I want checks and balances against the extreme ideological agenda of the Biden administration. So I wanted to see substantial representation in the House of Representatives, the United States Senate from Republicans. And I certainly wanted here in New York State to have real representation at a reestablishment of a two-party system. So I will separate this out for you. I think in New York State and in Florida, the Republican Party did exceptionally well because you had exceptional candidates. And I think that was a great victory. I think in the larger context across the country, it was a big disappointment, and I'll get into that in a minute. Talking about New York, I agree with you. Zeldin was a terrific candidate. He was within 5 percentage points of an incumbent governor who raised an enormous amount of money, had all the virtues of incumbency, had all the benefits of parsing out money through the budget process. Lee Zeldin fought hard. He was right on the issues. He was an articulate spokesman for the issues. He was a very attractive candidate. He was very helpful to the down ballot people, but also the down ballot people I think were helpful to him. The Republican Party did very well throughout the state. I think they've stopped the supermajority in the state Senate, which is a check and balance against the radical left extremism that dominates the Senate caucus in Albany. They also picked up a whole bunch of seats, Republicans did, in the Assembly, which doesn't quite stop the supermajority that Hastie has in the Assembly with the Democrats and that caucus, again, driven by the extreme left, but it's at least something. You won, I think the Republicans won 10 or maybe 11 United States House of Representatives seats, thanks to the work that you did in Suffolk County and what Joe Cairo did as county chair in Nassau County. You won those 4 House seats. That was remarkable. I want to do a shout out to my good friend Ed Cox, the former chairman of the state party, who led the drive with former Congressman John Faso to challenge the illegal, unconstitutional, excessive gerrymandering done by the Democratic Party. They litigated. They won. They went into court. A special master was appointed, and you got fair districts for the first time. That's because the Democrats, who were piggish, were trying to take everything and totally marginalize the Republican Party's congressional representation. So with respect to New York, salute to the Republican parties. Let us hope we're going to have the beginning of a strong two-party system in New York State. We do not want to become Illinois. We do not want to become California. One-party dominance is a terrible thing. They push through legislation with their supermajorities, and it's not in the interest of the people. That's my take about New York. The larger question.
I agree with you.
Go ahead.
I agree with you, and I agree with your assessment. And I was just speaking of New York, but you're right. There was a red wave in New York. There was a red wave in Florida, and there were other parts of the country that's experienced that. But you're not wrong in when you say that it was a trickle nationally, and that's something that we're going to have to take a look at. We truly need to take a look at what happened and what transpired that these victories did not come forward. I mean, at one point we have to take a look at our polling too, because some of those races were closer than they actually were. We had better opportunities in some states, and right now, instead of having a 30 vote lead in the House or 30 to 40 majority in the House, we're looking at maybe a 5 vote majority. And basically, it's the same as the Democrats, except but it's 5. And I'll deal with a majority, whether it's 1 or 30. But you still need that wiggle room because this country is so diverse and has different perspectives of different matters. It just gives you that flexibility you need to get meaningful legislation accomplished. And the Senate, we're still fighting it out. You know, hopefully Nevada goes our way, which will give us the 50th seat. And then in December 6th, at the end of this runoff, without any secondary candidates to seek money out of or seek votes out of Herschel Walker, we'll be able to take that majority with 51 votes. But maybe this leads to a bigger conversation, Your Honor. Is the election results reflective of the country? That we are polarized right now for one reason or another. We're like 50-50 right now, and that gavel is going to move depending on the energy from one side to the other.
Well, I think the term of art is amongst the political scientists and the professional political class. It's you're going to have gridlock. Okay, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you have gridlock, you can stop some of the excessive legislative initiatives from the Biden administration, at least in the House of Representatives. I would have liked to see a much bigger win for the Republicans to give them some strength in the negotiations. Now, let's separate this discussion out. The United States Senate is very, very important because they have advice and consent power. That's over treaties. That's over federal judges, including justices of the Supreme Court. That's over the appointment of cabinet members, heads of agencies, undersecretaries, members of commissions and agencies. It's very, very important to understand that having one house, whether it's when you're in the minority, that is when the White House is controlled by the other party, is not enough to really fulfill your agenda. You can stop some bad stuff, but it's very, very hard to push through your affirmative agenda. And we have to lower expectations and be realistic about what it means. If Kevin McCarthy becomes the speaker and he has 5 or 6 votes in the majority, that's great. But if the Senate continues in Democratic hands, whether it's 51-49 or 50-50 with Kamala Harris breaking the deadlocks and giving Biden administration whatever they want anytime they want it, that's not good for the country, because a lot of bad legislation got enacted because she had that extra vote to break the deadlock. And I'm talking about all these inflation-busting legislation, all those tax and spend bills, all that over-excessive regulation by federal agencies over the economy, which has led to this very bad economy that we're going into, with the recession escalating, with if the Federal Reserve keeps raising interest rates. John Catsimatidis has been saying on Cats at Night as well as on Fox, we could have very well a depression. Nobody wants to have a depression, but when you have the cost of living going up, the value of property, your real property going down, when your 401ks and your deferred compensations get trashed, when your housing value is such that you have to pay more for a mortgage, and you look at your net worth and you see it's down, that impacts your view about the wealth effect. The wealth effect means very simply, you feel better, you spend more. You feel worse, you spend less, and that in fact impacts the growth of the economy. Because when people is holding back on spending, that will decrease inflation, but also decreases the productivity and also decreases the taxes that come into the government. So you have rising deficits, but less revenue. So this is both very simple and very complex, and we need to have balanced government to stop a radical left-wing agenda that's being pushed by the Democratic Party. Kevin has given us the sign. We'll be back in a moment for the second segment of the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with my good friend and esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We'll be back in a moment.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. We're back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Jesse Garcia, the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of Suffolk County. And we continue discussion. So, Jesse, let me tell you how, again, as the House Democrat, I'm stepping back and I try to be as objective as possible, both on the issues and in the politics. I think the blame game has already begun. And it's interesting how the blame game works. They're blaming Trump, and I think there's a lot of blame to be held there. I think Trump was a divisive force, as he continues to be. It's all about Trump. I submit to you that Trump was an excellent president, in many ways a great president, did a lot of good. I think the Biden administration is a failure, have done a lot of harm. But I think Trump, even though, and it's funny to say this, even though he's a successful enough politician, he himself elected as president of the United States, I don't think he's a good politician. He never really broadened his tent. He made enemies every day. He showed narcissistic tendencies. It's all about him. I think he pushed through a civil war against McConnell in the United States Senate. They should have been concentrating on the best candidates possible, not whether they were Trump true believers or McConnell loyalists. They should have been gotten together, sat in a room, and said it's important for the American people and for the future of this country that the Republicans win the United States Senate for the reasons I outlined earlier in the show. And I think that's blaming Trump. And you're already seeing some very important Republican people, elected officials, former elected officials, the political class, already rethinking whether Trump should be a factor in the 2024 cycle for elections, for the presidential cycle. And that's a problem. Now, on the other side, on the Hochul race, Hochul, is claiming that she had a great victory. She didn't have such a great victory. Lee Zeldin was within 300,000 votes to her, 5 percentage points. That's pretty close when you're given, and that's a tribute to the work that people like you and Joe Cairo and other people in the Republican Party did around the state, and he was a great candidate. But it was only 300,000 votes, Jesse. And I can tell you, I can't give you count for count, body for body, but we lost somewhere between 300 and 350,000 people who fled New York because of COVID and the bad policies of the Democratic Party and the crime factor, and they fled to Florida. So those people wound up in Florida and say, weren't voting in New York. So you lost a voting base who might have made it even closer, or even had a victory for Zeldin as Republican nominee. So who's getting blamed on the Democratic side for that? Well, guess who? Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. They're saying he was too hard on crime. No, you're wrong, political commentators. He was exactly right on crime. He should be calling out his fellow Democrats to do the right thing and change all the ridiculous pro-criminal, anti-public safety laws passed by the left-wing majority controlling the state legislature. So now blaming him for Hochul only winning by 300,000 votes. That's dead wrong. What they should have been listening to is a message that Mayor Adams was talking about: keep the city and the suburbs and the state safe. What say you?
Number one, I think it's wrong. Listen, the fact that Hochul had a razor-thin 300,000 vote victory, and you got to remember, and we say razor-thin because we've lived in the last 4 or 5 gubernatorial races since George Pataki was our governor, where the major news networks would call the New York gubernatorial race at 9:05. Not even projecting those victories. We said from the beginning that those races were not going to be that Zeldin race was not going to be called until Suffolk County and Long Island numbers came in, and they didn't officially call that race. Though MSNBC, of course, they always jump out ahead. Major news networks didn't call that race till like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning because it was that close, and the numbers had to be reviewed that closely. I think that the biggest problem that Hochul has, and if people want to blame anyone, Hochul should blame herself. She should blame herself and her Albany partners, because they're the ones, or their failed policies are the ones that made that race so close. Made that race so close that we need to have that made it so imperative for them that they had to bring in all these, Democratic celebrities to bring in. So to blame another Democrat because, my gosh, he wanted to have safety and his citizens to be safe, that's just out the door. What's also scary about that, Your Honor, is that by them blaming Mayor Adams, that means they're not going to do anything to fix the fail moving forward. They may even double down on it. That's what's scary about that type of blame game that's going on now. That their policies that have already been failed, they're going to be leading to other policies and other legislation that is going to make us even less safe in our community. So we have to be watching that. As a result, with Trump, I would say that no matter what discussion there is, whether it's now, last year, next year, or for the next 20 years, Democrats are always going to choose to blame the boogeyman that's Donald Trump. That's number one. Number two, I do think that there is some culpability here is that Donald Trump should have utilized his super PAC fundraising capability and direct funds to support many of these candidates that he supported in the primaries. That's something that he should have done, and he needs to rethink as he moves forward. If you're going to give, it's not just your endorsement you need in some of these races. You need the financial resources because you have big corporations, big tech. You have the Democrats in power, clinging on to power. They are trying to siphon it off and cut off financial resources to these challenger candidates. The mistake that Donald Trump made was not backing his endorsements with financial resources directly into the campaigns that identified and worked on behalf of the campaigns and not so much those of the super PAC that he's in control of.
Well, I agree with that. Look, and the Wall Street Journal had a lead editorial this week on that very issue. Number one, he got involved in the Civil War with McConnell, and as I've told you before, I think that was very bad politics. It was very bad for the Republican Party and for the people of this country. He shouldn't have had a civil war. He was bad-mouthing McConnell throughout. You had certain Senate candidates saying they're going to vote against McConnell in a leadership fight come January, whether it's for majority leader or minority leader. That's just stupid politics. It's regrettable politics. It didn't help. You have to stop the infighting, particularly when you're a minority party, which the Republican Party is nationwide. So you have to stop that nonsense. You have to be grown-ups, and you have to get together. He backed a number of people in the primaries. How much money he gave in the primaries, I don't know. Some loyalists to Trump won. You can argue whether they were the stronger candidates, the weaker candidates. I think some of them were strong candidates. Some of them were weaker candidates. He did not give money. He didn't unpack his checkbook. A large number of these candidates, either one who became competitive Republicans, is because McConnell came up with the money to help these people. And that's very important to recognize. Even though some people were bad-mouthing Mitch McConnell, the minority leader of the United States Senate, he was still funding their campaigns. For example, Vance in Ohio won on McConnell money. Okay? Blake Masters in Arizona became relatively competitive, and we'll see what happens in the Arizona race. But he became relatively competitive, not because of Trump money, but because of McConnell money. And Thiel, that multi-billionaire who backed him in the primary, wasn't really seen giving real money to Masters in Arizona. So you have to understand it is a money game, and you have to get your message out, especially when the media is controlled by the Democratic Party, and you're not getting a fair shake on networks or the print media, or they're trying to suppress your message on big tech. So that becomes very, very important. And let me just say this. 3%, according to the latest analysis I've seen, 3% win by the Democrats of the independent vote. So what does that mean? That the independents, by a margin of 3% nationwide, and individual states are different, of course, individual districts are different, but 3% nationwide of independents favor the Democratic Party in this election cycle as opposed to the Republican. That means as bad as the economy is, as bad as the border is, as bad as abandoning Afghanistan, as bad as the late responses with respect to the Ukraine, as bad as the loss of the cities and the threats to the suburbs because of the crime epidemic, all of that were winning messages for the Republican Party, and yet independents broke for the Democrats. That tells you they either didn't like the candidates or they didn't like the messaging, okay? And that becomes a serious issue. Because if you can't win having those issues at your back, then what are you going to win on? And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that they didn't like some of the candidates that came forward because the Civil War is unnecessary. There were candidates, for example, I had lunch with Dr. Oz. He's a lovely man, charming guy, very smart, and they elected somebody who's totally unfit by background, intellectual capacity, ideology, to be a United States Senator, physical capacity. In Pennsylvania, somebody who's against fracking in the state of Pennsylvania, which will cost the people of Pennsylvania 500,000 jobs and cause an energy crisis in Pennsylvania. And yet he beat Dr. Oz by a couple of percentage points. A stronger candidate in the primary was probably McCormick, who could have probably beaten the Democrat. But Oz was Trump's candidate. Now, I liked Oz, and I wanted to see Oz win, but that's the political reality. You could have a stronger candidate. And so we have to get away from these litmus tests. Are you loyal to Trump? You're not loyal to Trump. And get out of the Civil War game that they've been playing, because you can't win. Now, let me just say this. Why did the Republicans do as well as they did, in my opinion, even though it wasn't a wave? Because the policies and the programs of the Democratic Party are dismally destructive to the people of the United States and to the security of this country. And they kept saying how we didn't do a good job of messaging. No, you had no record to run on. You had no message that was positive. You kept talking about abortion, and nobody took the trouble to understand that the Supreme Court did not abolish abortion. It just said, as it is in the Constitution, it's within the state's power to regulate abortion. Nobody was abolishing abortion. But they had that message. Then they had the phony message, which I found very offensive, coming from people like Obama and Clinton's. They said democracy at stake. No, democracy, Jesse, was not at stake at all. We had a democratic election, and it came out just fine. And just because you don't agree with the political ideology of the left-wing Democratic Party does not mean that you're against the constitutional republic that is this country. What say you? We have a minute to go in this segment.
Number one, I believe that Mr. Oz, Dr. Oz's situation was a little bit different. He grew as a candidate as he came through in this. He's not a politician. Remember, neither is Trump. Trump is not a politician either. But one of the things that handicapped Oz, I believe, is that by the time they finally had a debate and they pulled back the curtain, on Fetterman, about 1 million Pennsylvanians had already voted through early voting or absentees.
Exactly right.
And they couldn't take that vote back. That was a problem. And give credit to the Democrats. Whatever shenanigans they played, they made sure they played it where they could save face and not hurt themselves to lose the seat. I believe that from that point, Oz was surging and he was growing as a candidate. But honestly, I think that's separate. That's separate from all the other races. There should have been more resources going forward. And you're right. The abortion issue was used. And listen, campaigns, Republican, Democrat, any campaigns, you're going to present the facts in a manner that it's going to try and drive voters for your way. So I really have no issues with that and such. But there is a responsibility to want to seek office and then take the oath and serve. And blatantly lying the way they did that democracy was at stake here and truly using the ultimate fear tactic of going forward is was wrong with their tactics, the Democratic tactics. And now they're going to have to live with those. We're going to, unfortunately, have to live with them as policymakers. But the best thing about this is that there's a new cycle that comes forward. 24 will be here faster than you think. And before that, we have 23, which will set the stage for 24.
Well, I think that's exactly right. Let's take a break now. This is the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. We're back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of Suffolk County. So let me switch gears a little bit and just say, let me tell you what I believe. I believe it's time for a change in leadership of both political parties. I don't think any of the people whose names are being floated out there, whether you want to resurrect Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump wants to run again, I don't think either of those people can unite the party. I think if those are your candidates in 2024, that's not a good thing for America. We need fresh faces, fresh blood, people who can unite the country, not divide. Trump has his base, I'd call it 25%, call it 27% of the Republican Party. They're loyalists. They love him. They think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I understand that. I tell you once again, I think he was an excellent president, even a great president in some regards, but I don't think he's the guy who can win in 2024. Hillary Clinton, the same old song. She believes she's entitled to be president of the United States. Why? I'm not quite sure, but she believes she's entitled. The Democrats are in a quandary because they have Biden, who clearly should get off the stage. He's not capable of doing the job now. He certainly won't be capable a couple of years from now. His vice president is a dismal elected official, a dismal candidate. She can't unite the American people. She hasn't done anything substantive at all. She is a beneficiary of identity politics. They wanted a minority woman, so they picked her. That's not the way to get the leadership of the free world, by saying we're going to have so many people with red hair, so many people with green hair. You can't do that. You need to have the best talented people, men or women, black or white, Latino, Asian, it doesn't matter. You need to get smart, tough people who protect and defend this country in the most dangerous time of my lifetime. And I think if the leadership of both parties are smart, they'll start looking around about who's there that can do the job to lead this American people to protect and defend this great country, which is under challenge from the axis of evil, and somebody who can unite this country. Because this internal divisiveness, Jesse, is very detrimental both to making this country work and protecting it from its outside enemies. What say you?
I agree. I think that one of the issues we're dealing with, and listen, for any party or organization to advance, it needs to also adjust and grow. And it needs, at times, fresh new faces, and because it brings fresh new ideas. I think that there's a combination where you can do that. Listen to the Republican Party. You can do that with our standard bearers that we have today, plus bringing in new people. That's what we've done here in Suffolk County Republican Committee. We have some veteran elected officials, veteran campaign individuals, and we bring in fresh new blood, and we elect them, and we put them in different campaigns to bring new ideas forward. I think we should look at the election of 2022, and I would say nationally, the big winner of this election is by far Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. He has put forward a path for Republicans to follow next year and the years to come, even well beyond 24, where how he can build coalitions and such with the Latino community and different minority groups and different perspectives and such, blue collar, white collar, and so forth. And he did that in Florida. Remember 4 years ago he won by less than 40,000 votes, and this year he won by an excess of 60% of the vote. And again, governor and statewide candidate and congressman in Charlie Crist. So I think that, as we go forward, we always need to keep our tent open and do a mix of, our standard bearers plus new fresh ideas and new people that bring and articulate those fresh ideas. We can't be closed off to these people. We can't, do name calling. We can't do any of this. We have to embrace them because that's how parties grow. And we got to look at Ron DeSantis and see the coalition that he built in Florida there. Cuban Americans that used to go for Barack Obama are now Republicans down there. The registration has changed in Florida to plus Republican as opposed to plus Democrat. Look at the path and the way the race was waged here in New York by Lee Zeldin. He began the coalition of Hispanics, members of the Jewish community, the Asian community, the South Pacific, the Pacific community and such. He was building that coalition that was propelling him to be within 300,000 votes of Governor of Kathy Hochul. And if you look at the electoral map of New York City, there's a lot more red and orange and yellow there than there has been in years past. So you see, I guess my point is that there's parts of this, the foundation of the party, and those who have helped bring us to this point, that we need to meld that and embrace the new ideas, new perspectives, and new approaches that lead to larger coalitions while maintaining our philosophical ideals. And we've seen two examples of that here in the Northeast with Lee Zeldin in New York and Ron DeSantis in Florida. And let's look at Ron DeSantis won by a bigger victory than, than the governor of California. So, they're doing the same, they're doing things differently, and we're growing as opposed to them either staying stagnant or shrinking.
Well, I think that's very well said. So let's shift gears from it. I believe it's time for a change in the direction of this country. I think it's time for, to use a term of art that the politicians use or the policy analysts use, it's time for a reset by the Biden administration. I respectfully submit that they got to wake up on border security and do something about it. They got to wake up on the economy and do something about it. They have to wake up on inflation and do something about it. They have to wake up on the crime wave and do something about it. They have to wake up against wokeism and censorship and do something about it. And I don't know that Biden and the people around him are capable of making that course change about resetting the policies the way Clinton did after he had a tremendous defeat in the midterms. See, the problem with the way the midterms turn out is Biden's already out there saying, look, my policies are vindicated. They're using the fact that there was a red trickle rather than a red wave as, well, look how I did better than any president in history in terms of the loss of seats. And there's an argument, there's a superficial attraction to that, but it doesn't get away from the fact that the policies that he's enunciated and he's pushing forward are dangerous policies to America. What do you say?
I agree. And I think that representatives from both parties have about 10 months that they can govern, in all honesty, before they start to get into their re-election cycles. And I hope that when the Republicans go into office in the House of Representatives with control of that chamber, that they use their influence for the benefit of the people of the United States, to share ideas to reduce inflation, make us safer, make us into energy independence, improve our quality of life. I hope they need to. They have a responsibility to their party, more importantly to the people, to share those ideas, a commitment to America, and not, take political pot shots or look for political revenge. If we take back the U.S. Senate, which I hope they do, and I think we might, we should do that together as the legislative body to check President Biden. Because here's the thing. A divided government will not just lead to gridlock, but it has an opportunity to drag those to the center. It has an opportunity to have Joe Biden come to the center and come to a position where if you really want to run in 24, you need a list of accomplishments that don't balloon the deficit, don't balloon inflation, and don't balloon the crime rate. Come to the table, work in earnest on proposals that achieve that for the American people over the next 10 months, beginning in January. Maybe you should begin even now as the chambers start being flipped over. If not, the big losers here are going to be the American people. And I really truly hope that the leadership of both chambers do not engage in a situation where they use, the filibuster, the elimination of the filibuster, the packing of the Supreme Court, or impeachment as political tools of retribution. We don't need any more of that. We need to be the adults in the room now and share and pass ideas and proposals and legislation that help the American people not get political retribution.
That's very well said. So let me tell you about an interesting lunch that John Catsimatidis and I had with Senator.
Always on. I mean, whenever you guys go to lunch, it's an interesting lunch. You guys,
yeah, we sit there and look at. We could read the phone book; it'd be fascinating. I know.
Exactly.
So we had an interesting lunch this week with Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, and Senator Kaine, as many of our listeners will recall, was a vice presidential nominee in 2016, running with Hillary Clinton when she was a presidential nominee for the Democrats. And Tim Kaine is a common sense Democrat. He's a moderate. He's a smart guy. And we were talking about energy policy. We were talking about national security. We were talking about border security. We were talking about the problem of inflation. we're talking about the immigration problem. It was a far-ranging discussion with Senator Kaine. And I walked away from that lunch feeling very, very good that there's somebody very smart from the Democratic Party who could speak to bring my party back to common sense values. And I was particularly impressed because during the course of the discussion, he brought out that he has a very close personal and professional relationship with Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska, who's a Republican United States Senator, a military man, an expert on energy and national security. And these two of them are friends. They work together to find common ground to protect and defend this country and to try to work for energy independence and responsible immigration policy. And that made me feel good because I know Senator Sullivan. He's been in the studio at Cats Tonight with John and me and our other co-hosts. He's a remarkably insightful guy. He's a good person. He really is a patriot. And that if you have people like Kaine and Sullivan crossing the aisles, having a personal friendship, getting away from political name-calling and animosity, and working together to do the right thing for this country, that's good. So I agree with you. When the Republicans take control of the House, they should work positively, go across the aisle to find common ground. You have somebody like Kaine and Sullivan in the Senate. They can do that. And more people on both sides of the aisle should be moving in that direction. After all, we're all Americans. It's our country. Lincoln said it best, united we stand, divided we fall. And we cannot forget the external threats to this country are enormous. Never before in my lifetime have we had such a dangerous period of time. And we're confronted by many countries who wish us ill, and we're hurting ourselves on the inside. We have to get away from divisiveness and work together to protect this country. Kevin has given me the sign. We're going to take a break. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We'll be back for our fourth and final segment of the Long Island Report in just a moment.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. We're back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party and the County Chair of Suffolk County. When we were off the air, Jesse and I were just chatting together, and Jesse's a Republican, I'm the Democrat, and we said, maybe these professional politicians who get elected to the state legislatures and the city councils and the Congress of the United States and the Senate, maybe they should start listening to this show and listening to Cats at Night and listening to Cats Roundtable on Sundays and see how we try to reason together, listen to the other side, reach common ground to preserve and protect this country rather than going through this ideological passions, the self-righteous nonsense that doesn't get us into a more secure place. We're faced by external enemies that would love to gobble us up and marginalize us. And I'm very concerned about this. And one of the big issues I'm concerned about is a China threat in that regard. What do you say?
I completely agree. I think that, we really talked about the last segment, we ended it and we talked in the middle of it, is that there needs to be a situation here where we got to take a parochial and yet a global view of this. First, we have to take care of the United States. We have to take care of our security. We have to take care of our economy. We have to take care of our own energy independence, first and foremost. And once we're able to secure that, we need to come together and also understand the threats that are presented to us by China, by North Korea, by Russia, and be prepared to meet those challenges united instead of using it as a political football. And I think that's what's been lost in here, that there's been too much political football and going back and forth. And listen, I'm a partisan, and I'm gonna debate and argue and campaign on issues and ideas that are contrary to Democrats each and every day. It's easy for me because their policies fail. But there should be one thing that we all agree upon, is that we are all Americans first. And we need to take care of the American people first, and then take that strength and take that prosperity and be able to ensure our security outside our borders and help our allies. Because, as we've always said, allies tumble one after another between the regimes of Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia. Eventually, this great republic that we defend and love so much is going to be surrounded. And that's one thing we never want to ever be. It is something that we need to do. We need to be united as a nation, and we need to extend the peace through strength.
Absolutely right. You know, I was talking to Senator Kaine about it today at the lunch, and I said, look, this is very important to understand. China's buying up U.S. Farmland. Why are we allowing that? And within close proximity to our military bases, are we out of our minds? And China's buying up land in Venezuela. And what do you think they're going to do with Venezuela? They're going to put in armaments and maybe nuclear weapons in Venezuela. The Monroe Doctrine meant that you wouldn't allow incursions by foreign powers in our hemisphere. We can't allow this, and yet it goes on and on every day. They're buying up property. They're subverting our business communities. They're ripping off our intellectual property. They give monies to universities to buy silence. They're constantly doing espionage activities. They're a very dangerous threat, China. And they're working with Russia, and they're working with Iran, and they're working with Venezuela, and they're working with North Korea. And we are exposed. And the longer we deny that reality, the more dangerous it becomes. One of the topics of conversation we've had on Cats at Night with the members of Congress and the Senate that we talk about all the time, the United States is not prepared to fight a two-front war. Indeed, the United States may not be prepared to fight a one-front war. There's a recent study by the Heritage Foundation that shows that we are underfunding and underprepared in terms of our military, whether it's our Navy, whether it's artificial intelligence in the military, whether it's armaments. I'm a big fan and supporter of the Ukraine regime, but as you've pointed out, we've given a lot to them, and we should continue to give a lot to the Ukrainians, but we deplete our own resources at the same time. That means we have to be capable of building up our armaments, because President Reagan had it right. It's peace through strength. It's nice to be nice, but who pays the price? And let's make sure that we're strong, because if we're not strong, we're going to be victims of this adventurism and this aggression from this axis of evils. What say you, Jesse?
Absolutely. I can't disagree with you. And that's what's scary a little bit. I'm concerned for your grandchildren. I'm concerned about my son and the children of my neighbors and everyone here, because there needs to be that, that one America, that united America that's, clenched together in a way that it can be united. And the only way we can do that is, we can do it one of two ways. Either the people are going to do it themselves and without the people in power, or the people in power could be partners with the constituency to get this done. And it's always best when you do it with your elected leaders and your constituencies doing it together, because what we'll see the other way is the throw the bums out mentality that will occur on both sides. And on both sides of the aisle have to be cautious of that. We have to, take some responsibility, take their oaths seriously, or else we're going to have problems of a scale that's going to be unprecedented. Last week we had Nick Lota. He was just reelected. He was just elected to Congress this past November last week on the show, as he was making his closing argument. And, he's an Annapolis grad, a naval veteran, and he was speaking about the importance of what you just touched upon, the importance of being prepared to wage the next battle, the next war, whether it be cyber or otherwise, and not the last one. We've heard Kevin McCarthy, hopefully the next Speaker of the House, say the same thing to us. It's important that we keep that in mind, that we have to begin the process and actually direct resources, not to failed social programs that chain people in place, but to give them the ability to and the opportunity to advance, by through their own self-empowerment, but also provide ourselves with the resources we need to establish the security for the next terrorist attack upon this nation of us, upon these people. And you got to give credit to what's credit is due. Sometimes you do it with bravado. Teddy Roosevelt did it with bravado. Ronald Reagan did it with bravado. President Trump did it with bravado. They kept our enemies at bay, and they backed it up with legislative proposals and budgetary proposals that made sure that everyone knew that we were capable of winning the next war, the next attack, of preventing the next attack upon our country. George W. Bush did it differently. He did it more methodically, especially after the attacks of 9/11. We need to do the same thing. Appeasement's not going to work. It's only one way. It's peace through strength.
Absolutely.
That's the type of people we're dealing with on the other side.
Well,
we're dealing with bullies that only respond to the potential punch in the nose to sit them back. And like Russia, Putin has got that punch in the nose, not from the United States. He got it from Ukraine.
Well, there's about to be a meeting between Xi, who's the head, the now emperor for life in China, and President Biden. And I just hope that Biden understands that he has to show strength and determination in terms of meeting the China threat. I mean, Russia is a problem, and in some ways it's a threat to Europe, and I get it, but the existential threat to the United States and to Western civilization comes from Islamic terrorism on the one hand and Chinese imperialistic hegemonic ideals. China wants to take over the world. They want to dominate everything, and we need to address that and be aware of that. And Biden has to be up to the game, because if Xi, who's a very tough guy, goes to this meeting and he sees weakness on the part of Biden and a lack of seriousness of purpose, then we're in serious trouble, because the more weakness we show, the more aggressive they become. You said it correctly. It's a great lesson of the times. In the 20th century, the world learned that you can't appease these adventuristic, hegemonic dictators. Chamberlain went back after Munich and said, peace in our time. And within a very short time after giving out everything, there was war in Europe. If there had been strength shown by Chamberlain, maybe they could have forestalled that. Historians like to say, well, Chamberlain wasn't all that bad. He was just trying to buy time to get England ready for the war that he knew was coming. I don't know if that's correct or it's not correct, but I will tell you that being a half-baked student of history, I feel more comfortable having people like Churchill lead the free world than people like Chamberlain. I feel more confident having Ronald Reagan lead the free world than I do Joe Biden. Jesse, a final word before we sign off?
I just hope that President Biden is up to his meeting with President Xi. There's a lot at stake there. As an American, I hope he's successful, because that means America's successful.
Amen to that. Jesse, thanks again for another great conversation. Look forward to speaking with next week. I hope our audience has enjoyed the conversation. This has been the Long Island Report with Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We wish your families good health and safety. Talk to you next week. Thank you.